Ambassador Lowell is the ambassador of Malta to the United States and High Commissioner to Canada. That's the same thing as an ambassador, but it's called High Commissioner because they all have the part of the British heritage. He has been previously ambassador to Croatia, Bulgaria, Romania, and Herzegovina, Bosnia. He comes from a business background where he has been in banking and development, real estate, and was chairman of the National Theater there. He's a very delightful gentleman, and I'm just curious, how many in this audience has ever been to Malta? Oh, look at that, 3 people. So there are 3 that know where Malta is. Now, I'm just curious, how many of you who have not been to Malta could find it on the map and very quickly? Now, that's really an improvement. That's great. Well, we're delighted to welcome Ambassador Lowell here, and he will speak for a bit and then entertain questions. Mr. Ambassador.
Good afternoon. First of all, I'm very happy that you have a modern map in this room, because in the old maps, many times, Malta was not even figured in the map. So you couldn't find it because it wasn't there. But here, at least, I can see that Malta is pinpointed. I thought I would just give you I'm going to read a few notes about what Malta is all about, what is Malta. And then second, as we go along, it's Malta and the European Union, of course, because now we're part of the European Union. And then eventually close up by giving you an idea of the relationship between Malta, the European Union, and the USA. So if you could bear with me a bit for me to go through my notes and read a bit, and then after that I will take any questions you'd like to put to me, and I hope I can answer them to you. So the first known inhabitants to come to Malta date back to 7,000 years ago. These prehistoric ancestors are believed to be of Middle East origin, but they hailed from Sicily, which is the southernmost tip of the Italian peninsula. That was where Malta is. Malta is situated right in the middle of the Mediterranean and is 93 kilometers south of Sicily and 300 kilometers north of Tunisia. The Maltese archipelago, because it's made up of 3 islands, have 3 islands which are inhabited, and that is Malta, Gozo, and Comino, spanning over an area of 316 square kilometers. The population of Malta and Gozo, that is the second largest island, is approximately 400,000 people. That's all, 400,000 people. Malta is indeed very small, especially when looked at from a point of view of someone living in such a vast country like America. Nonetheless, the history of Malta and of its people is one of great richness and depth. Malta's prime geographical location has had a great impact on its people. Ruled in the olden times by many European powers due to its very important position on the map, its people until this very day reflect the numerous conquerors and rulers that passed over the island. We were ruled by virtually every country in the world. A quick rundown for you to know of who ruled Malta from the prehistoric times until independence in 1964 would be approximately as follows. After the prehistoric nomadic tribes from which set foot on the island 7,000 years ago, came the Phoenicians, then the Romans, the Byzantines, the Arabs, the Knights of Malta, the French, and finally the British from 1800 until 1964. All these conquerors may be said to have left something of their own in Malta, rich in diverse architectural remains. The landscape, language, and even cuisine of Malta reflects its colorful history. Malta's rich heritage attracts many tourists from all over the world, And although we are 400,000 inhabitants, in a good year we normally import about 1,200,000 tourists visiting Malta. Few people realize or expect that on such a small cluster of islands one can come across such wealth of history and tradition. Malta is both an outstanding summer vacation destination as well as a living microcosm of Mediterranean history. Now, turning to more modern times. Once independence was achieved in 1964, Malta started to play her part in international relations. Soon after independence, Malta joined major organizations such as the United Nations, the ILO, FAO, WHO, OSCE, and the Council of the European, amongst others. Malta is also part to numerous international agreements and conventions. On May 1st of 2004, Malta joined the European Union. The process for joining was long and at times difficult, and took 3 decades to join the EU from when the first association agreement with the then European Community was signed in 1970. Nonetheless, after all these efforts, Malta, together with another 9 countries, joined the European Union on May 1st of 2004. Being part of the European Union means a lot to a country like Malta. Our size and sheer proximity to the European Union made it only natural and logical that our future lied within this union. Malta is now a full member of the European Union, which comprises of approximately 500 million citizens. That is 12.5% larger than the US population and 7.6% of the total world population, to show you the strength of the European Union today. Malta's foreign policy is geared towards promoting Malta's interest and safeguarding those of its citizens internationally, with an overriding commitment to global and regional peace and security. Over the years, and even more so today, this has meant that Malta has continually strived to maintain the best possible relations with other countries and has played an active role in a wide variety of international and regional institutions. If you want just a rundown of which are the European countries today, forming the European Union, the original European Union started off with having Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, Sweden, and United Kingdom. Then another 10 countries joined in 2004, where Malta was one of these 10 countries. And we were Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Malta, Poland, Slovakia, and Slovenia. And then in the 1st of January this year, we had Bulgaria and Romania, to whom I was previously accredited to. So I feel very happy that these 2 countries also joined the European Union. Now, as a European country that shares the values of democracy, the rule of law and respect for human rights, Maltese feel right at home within the Union. It is the government's intention to further consolidate Malta's European identity, creating a more open economy and new opportunities for Maltese citizens, whilst also participating in the development of Europe in the 21st century. The inspiration behind the government's policy for this membership was based on the conviction that Malta's economic, social and political developments are best pursued within a framework of partnership and cooperation. This could only be given in its full expression through membership of the European Union. Membership of the EU also affords Malta the opportunity to fulfill her international responsibilities with the vigour they deserve. Malta plays an active role within the European structure. Our government representatives and officials interact regularly with their European counterparts and sit around the same table to reach agreements. Although one cannot deny the fact that not all the members of the EU carry the same weight, they are all treated equally. This is very important for Malta. Malta has a veto like Germany does, and this ultimately gives a sense of reassurance to the Maltese people that the vital interest will always be respected, even if they are sitting around the table with much bigger countries. Like Germany, the current president of the EU, Malta will also have the chair of the EU presidency in the future. Malta will hold the rotating 6-monthly presidency between January and July of 2017. All this is subject to the possible changes of the EU constitution, currently suffering from some setbacks. Malta was one of the 15 member states of the EU that ratified the text of the EU constitution. The current German presidency has indicated clearly that one of its priorities for the next 6 months will be to revive this debate and try to achieve some sort of breakthrough on the constitution by June 2007, when Germany will hold the Heads of State Summit before ceding the presidency to Portugal for the remainder of the year. Now, having approved the text anonymously, Malta fully supports the efforts of the German presidency in this respect. The future of the EU might at times look bleak from this side of the Atlantic. However, this is not the case. Europe thrives on its values of diversity and unity. The European continent has witnessed many bloody wars. It has been divided and ruled since time immemorial. 50 years ago, however, something unprecedented took place in the heart of Europe. 50 years, we're going to be 50 years as a union now. Former enemies and competitors came together to build something based on the values of democracy, freedom, and rule of law. These founding fathers agreed that cooperation was the only way that mistakes of the World War II would not be repeated. 50 years later, this idea has thrived and grown to encompass 27 countries, who have all agreed to put away the machinery of war in order to engage in a dialogue with one another. This dialogue has led to the creation of the European Union, a global and natural partner for the United States. There are many challenges facing all of us nowadays. Many of these challenges are too complex to be dealt alone and in totality by one country or another. That is why the EU-US relations have witnessed unprecedented growth and proximity. On some issues we differ, and that is only natural, but on the crucial issues, the issues at the core of our very existence, we proudly stand side by side. In the Middle East, for example, the EU has to drive forward to peace efforts in cooperation with the United States, the UN, and Russia. The EU and the US must continue to work together to bring peace to the troubled region of the world. Both partners have experience and resources to contribute to this goal. Turning to trade, the US is the EU's most important trading partner. We are each other's key investment partner. It is in this interest of global competitiveness that the EU and the US must commit themselves to continue to remove trade barriers in order to create a common transatlantic market. Finally, let me finish by stressing that Malta's commitment to Europe does not lessen its determination to continue to play its role fully in the international stage. Like other members of EU, Malta enjoys a strong bilateral relations with the US and will continue to work to keep this relationship growing. This we do on a political, economic, and social level. Many Americans travel to Malta, and the Maltese are always thrilled to receive any Americans that come to our island. We look up to the U.S. administration as a leader in world politics, and we try in our way to contribute to what makes this country great. We look forward to the continuation of these good relationships. Now, with regards to the subject matter that is probably of most interest to you here today, that could be education. Please let me just say a few quick final words. Having presented to you some facts about Malta, its place in history, and its relations with the EU and with the US, kindly let me conclude by saying that Malta is also an ideal destination for educational purposes. Our university, which is one of the oldest probably today in the world, and education facilities offer a wide array of courses and specializations. Many American students have already taken advantage of the numerous exchange programs existing between Malta and the US. Tuition is in English, so it's easy. Therefore, no language barrier presents itself to anyone who is interested. Traveling to Malta to further studies will be, in my view, not only be good for your academic progress, but also to broaden your mind for the horizon. Finally, you will have a truly European experience in the heart of the Mediterranean with all the beauties and experiences that we have to offer. Thank you. If there are any questions you would like to know, I would be very happy to answer them as best as I can.
We'd like to thank you for your time here in BYU. My question is, Malta has always been in relation, like not always, but in the past, you've had connection with the Middle East, with Muslims and Arabs. I'm curious to know what Malta's position on the growing population of Muslims in Europe is, and what your view of Turkey joining the EU would be.
Yes. Our relations with the Muslim world perhaps comes only from where Malta is placed in the map, because we are close to the, Muslim world. But you have to also realize that we are much closer to the European countries. Malta is a 98% Roman Catholic country. We accept all religions to pray and take part in the islands of Malta, but we have always been basically very close to our European partners and the European religions, but we have always accepted and understood the religions of the other worlds. Now, coming back to Turkey, we have no qualms in accepting Turkey as being a member of the European Union, nothing at all. And one thing that is very clear in the European Constitution, that the European Union does not interfere in the religion of any other country. That means when we join the Union, the religion of the country does not come into effect at all. The only thing we have to make clear also for Turkey joining is that you have to go through about 28 or 29 chapters to be able to be accepted as part of the European Union. And you have to negotiate these chapters, and you have to accept what the chapters have to say and live up to that expectation. Now, there are a few chapters which I understand that perhaps Turkey has not quite reached the standard of the European Union. And I know also that negotiations have to start. But unless all the chapters, especially freedom of speech and also basically, what is the word? Human rights, that's the word, sorry. Human rights is very important. And I'm not quite sure that today Turkey has come up to the level of human rights as expected by the European Union. But if all these will be settled, I think that Turkey has a good chance of joining the Union. Malta has no objection at all to Turkey joining. Any other question? Yes, sir.
On the subject of Turkey, I know that many of the objections to Turkey's entry into the European Union were the result of Turkey's barring entry of Greek Cypriot ships to Turkish ports. I was wondering, you say that you don't oppose Turkey's entry into the Union, but how would that complicate your relations with Cyprus, which is an integral part and one of the founding members of the European Union?
No, as I said before, we are not against Turkey entering the European Union, but it has to abide by what the European Union says to Turkey. And I think that is one of the clauses which is very important today, that unless they solve the problem in Cyprus between the Turks and the Greeks, I don't think they have a very much chance of actually starting real negotiations. That has to be settled. But having that settled, because that is a point that the European Union have taken up with Turkey, then we have, as an island, no objection. But that has to be settled. But that is a clause that has come up between talks between the European Union and Turkey already. Yes? Yes?
This is just a background question, but does Malta maintain a military of any sort, or how does it take care of internal or domestic security?
Well, Malta has a police force and a very small army to look into the internal domestic problems, like trafficking and money laundering and so on. But in our constitution, Malta is a neutral country. We possess in our constitution a neutrality. That means that, for example, we are not part of NATO, and we cannot be part of NATO, and we cannot indulge in any country where there is a war for us to send any troops, the little we have, for example, like Iraq and so on. In our constitution, Malta has the clause of neutrality, and we have to stick that. And that was something which we had already negotiated before with the European Union before we entered. But again, in that respect, the European Union does not interfere in the internal policies of the country. As long as one agrees to the 28 or 29 chapters, which covers a very, very wide range of things, then you are accepted, and as long as you keep to your promises, then you will remain member of the European Union. But those are very heavily checked as well.
You said that it took about 3 decades and it was quite a difficult process to join the EU, and I was just wondering what some of those difficulties that were encountered were.
It's amazing to say, but for example, one of the problems we had with the EU, the control of bird shooting. Can you imagine? In Malta, by tradition, hunting for birds was virtually everybody's game, especially the villagers. Now, the European Union have conditions for that sort of thing. And it is difficult for a Malta government to be in power, to negotiate an item like that, and not lose votes on an election, because, of course, these bird hunters have families and have children and so on. So they create a number of votes against the principle of what they want. So that was, for example, one item which I know took a long time. Another item, of course, which was we never wanted to lose our language, identity of our language. We have one of the oldest languages, which is a Semitic language. We are bilingual. We speak English and Maltese. And this Maltese language was something which we wanted to keep because of its heritage. And again, that was a very long subject in discussion with the European Union. And finally, they accepted. And for example, now Malta is one of the official languages. I think there are about 12 languages which have been accepted in the European Union. And then there are other standards, standards of construction. Again, Malta, being a small island, there was a lot of construction work happening. Now, again, how to build, what standards do you have to keep up? Again, a very fine point for votes. And every government is basically governing, but always looking after for votes to be re-elected. And the European have very high standards of the building trade. So to persuade these old-time contractors and constructors for the building to reach certain standards was also quite a difficult situation. So I would say out of the 28 chapters, I think we ran through about 10 or 12 very easily, like banking laws were very easy because we were very much up to date. The law court system ran through very well. Hygiene and all that went very well. But there were a lot of individual chapters where it took a lot of time and discussions before we could finalize agreement. You see, what happens with these chapters is that there are standardized chapters. You have to follow these chapters once and for all. But then you can negotiate timing. You can say, look, for example, if this law doesn't abide exactly what the European Union law wants, you can ask for, say, a few years to take time to turn into what the standard of the European Union is. But if you, in those years, you will be checked by members of the European Union visiting, and if you don't reach those standards, and then you will be first fined money, and then after you could also be asked to be not take any more part of in the European Union, which so far out of all the countries in these 50 years nothing has happened. Everybody has reached the standards. Yes.
One of the commitments of Maltese foreign policy, as stated by the Maltese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is a commitment to the strategic partnership for the Mediterranean and the Middle East. And in this partnership, some of the stated goals are the development of political, social, and economic reforms. With the current unrest in areas such as Palestine, because of reforms such as this, does Malta still endorse such political reforms as have been advocated by the EU and the United States in the past towards democracy in the Middle East?
The Middle East is a very important part of the map for us because it's so close to Malta. And we have had also very good relations with these countries in the Middle East. So we are trying to play a very important role in settlement in the Middle East. As a matter of fact, my Minister of Foreign Affairs, has asked specifically for the 27 EU ministers for foreign affairs to meet in Malta to see how we could discuss the Middle East problems with representatives from the Arab countries. So it is a very important, it's a good question, and Malta is trying to take a leading role in trying to see, because we have this experience of being rather friendly with these countries, and perhaps we could be in a position to be negotiate and be intermediate for talks. So hopefully the European Union foreign ministers will accept my minister's request to come to Malta and meet up and discuss the matter, which of course, as I say, is so important to anybody in the world today. So yes, we're taking a lead in this respect. Everything is clear?
I heard you say something about foreign trade. How did the EU ever come with a policy to make everyone not have so many tariffs and all of the things involved in that? How have they done that?
Well, they haven't 100%. The results haven't not been 100% clear yet, but I know that there are very heavy and ongoing discussions between the US and EU to remove these trade borders and to have a more of an open trade. But these are all agreements. But instead of having individual countries of the EU negotiate bilaterally with America for trade arrangements, they are trying to treat it as one global situation. And I know that there are very clear and important meetings where I think the trade between America and the US have opened for tariffs, to be controlled.
Does America seem quite cooperative in this?
Yes. Not quite a hard nut to crack, but I know that they are. Yes, of course, they get on pretty well together. But pulling from here, pulling from there. But eventually we're arriving because we are the greatest, as I say, trade partners. More than, for example, America and I don't know, India or America and China. We are the greatest, trade partners, and of course we will never lose that situation.
You talk about your illegal immigration situation.
Yes. Shall I expand on that? Yes. I'll come to you, Matt. All right. So would you like to ask the question first?
I was just going to ask, what is the Maltese economy based on? What are your great imports and exports?
Yes. Our greatest import is tourism. Number of people coming to Malta and hopefully spend money in Malta. We hardly export anything, but we don't have any raw material except the sun and the sea and the people. So we have a sort of what they call a light industry, where we import raw material, especially from the European countries like Germany, and manufacture the imported raw material in Malta because of the skilled labor we have, and also on account of that the wages are not as high as other European countries, and re-export to countries. I remember that in my business I was involved also in this sort of thing, and I used to represent Macy's. Macy's, your big department. And Macy's, I remember, used to manufacture a lot of the men's clothes, especially in Malta, and that was one of the reasons we did that. But what we were offering now, which is what probably also becoming as important as tourism, is our services. A lot of firms choose Malta as a stepstone to get into Europe and to get into North Africa. First of all, the language is an advantage because we always speak language, the English language, all of us speak. Malta is a very safe country to be in. So the firms, companies who open up companies in Malta for other destinations feel themselves very comfortable. The Maltese are very skilled and hardworking. And our services, like our banking laws and also legal laws, are very, very modern and very much up to date. So any companies coming from even the States, Bill Gates has just invested in a very big way in Malta, and is using it as a hub. Find Malta a very good spot to invest in. Now, yes, we have today probably our biggest problem, which I didn't mention, is that we have an inflow into Malta of illegal immigration. There is, as you know, thousands of families from the sub-Sahara trying to integrate into Europe and finding new jobs and works and living. Their main aim is to go to the bigger mainlands like Italy, Spain, Portugal, and even Germany and so on. But as Malta is right in the middle of this sea voyage between North Africa and Italy, and also because the Mediterranean can be very rough, have rough weather, a lot of these poor people find themselves stranded in Malta. And they arrive on our shores or very close. Many times we have to send our patrol boats to even, we get a lot of people who actually drown in the meantime. So we keep them in these camps because they come to Malta without knowing any language, without having any passports, so we don't even know from where they come. So we keep them and we try to help them out as much as possible. We give them, food, we look after their health. And this is a great burden on our Maltese economy. So we are striving very hard with discussing this matter with the European Union to see if they can remove us from this burden and perhaps take a number of people to the other shores. And we have also, when I say so, succeeded in convincing also the Americans are taking groups from Malta for some of these people to come and live in the United States. But this is a big problem. We have over 3,000 of these presently in Malta, which is a lot for the size of Malta, not for the number of people in Malta, but for the size. We're only, as I said, 120 square miles, which is twice approximately the size of DC. So really it's quite small. But this is probably our biggest problem today, which we're trying to solve. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that your language is Semitic. Is it inherently Semitic, or was it due to the Moors that you had borrowed Arab words in your language? Maltese.
Let me tell you, as our civilization goes back to about 7,000 years from now, 5,000 before Christ, we are not quite sure, really. We haven't discovered exactly the Maltese origin. Who are exactly the Maltese? We know, and we assume that these are the people who came from the Sicilian shores. But in that period, Sicily was also run by the Arab world. So we have to assume that the language is a combination of Arabic and Southern Italian, but we are not even 100% sure yet. But it's a Semitic language. It's a very old language, and of course, in the years later, we turned it into our national language, and of course, started off by having our own words translated into different other languages. But we're not, as I say, gospel that is 100% right with what I'm telling you.
We have time for one more question.
Yes.
Do women in your country have the same opportunities as men?
More. In my case. I don't know about... yes, definitely. Yes, of course. Yes.
No.
In this respect, no, I think the women play a very important part in our lives in Malta. No, have always been.
No arranged marriages?
No arranged marriages, no. Thank you very much indeed.